What's up, everybody? I wanted to do a quick video here. I've been reading here, studying the Bible, and I ran across a story here that is quite fascinating. It kind of illustrates how one is sort of groomed by an agent of the enemy. And that's what I want to talk about here this evening. It's Saturday evening here. I just came from church. And yeah, I'm just sitting here, just sort of studying the Bible here. I don't know if many of you have heard of the story of Samson. It's found in Judges 13 and Judges 14. It actually goes all the way, I believe, to Judges, like around Judges 20. But the story of Samson has always fascinated me. I remember as a little boy being told that story by my dad, and what I found very interesting was, you know, Samson was a very strong man, and his strength was in his hair. But not only that, the reason why he was so strong was he had a knowledge of God. He had sort of an inner light, which I believe many targeted individuals possess, and that was the reason why he was targeted. Samson was indeed a targeted individual, and he was targeted because of his wisdom, because of his light. I would love to go through this whole story, but I don't want to make this video long. I actually want to make it short. So I want to reference what I'm reading here, what I'm studying, and just kind of give you sort of an overview of the story. So it starts out talking about Samson being born in Judges 13, verse 24. And then it goes into chapter 14, where Samson desires a wife. Now, many of you know that, you know, Samson was considered a man of God. He was actually from a royal line. He was from the line of God's people. And, you know, the Bible's very clear about mixing and mingling with the Philistines. You know, the Jews could never mix and mingle with the Philistines. And the parents of Samson sort of felt like Samson should have picked someone, you know, from their own people. It says there in verse 1 of chapter 14, it says, Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistine. He came up and told his father and his mother, and he said, I've seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistine. Now, therefore, get her for me to wife. So he's basically asking his mother, his father, to get this woman, this daughter of the Philistines, so that he can marry her. The story goes on that, you know, the father and the mother asked a question. He says, is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, or among all my people, that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? Now, this was very key. This is the reason why I think we talk about those that are chosen and those that are not chosen. It doesn't mean that they're superior. It just means that, like in biblical times, you have those that were circumcised, those that were not circumcised. Those that were circumcised were considered, you know, chosen. For all intents and purposes, they were set apart rather, for a specific work. It's interesting. The sun is setting here just as I'm speaking. It's really, really a nice view outside there. But anyway, the story goes on that, you know, Samson tells his mother, you know, basically, I want her, get her for me. And he says here in verse 7, notice down in verse 7, it says he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Samson well. And after a time, he returned to take her and turn aside to see, and after a time, he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion. And behold, there was a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of lion, and he took thereof in his hand and went on eating, and came to his father and mother, and he gave them, and they did eat. But he told not them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of the lion. So lots of symbolism here. Samson's asking his mother and father for permission to marry this uncircumcised woman of the Philistines. Obviously, this uncircumcised woman of the Philistines, you know, she's not meant to be his wife, but he wants her because she pleases him well. If you really look at the story, and it's interesting that they start talking about this honey that comes out of the lion here, because that is, in fact, a honey pod or a honey trap. And it comes from the lion. And then he goes back and gives it to his mother, as if his mother and the father, as if, you know, Samson is actually acting as sort of a conduit to allow his mother and father to be deceived, So anyway, the story goes on in chapter 14, verse 10, all the way down to the end of the chapter. It talks about how Samson married this woman. You know, he marries her, and then finally they have a feast. And, you know, Samson's telling this riddle, you know. I want to kind of read through that, and I'm just going to kind of briefly do that. I'm already 6 minutes into this video, but I just really want to focus on the story of Samson. I may do a part 2 of this, but very interesting. It says in verse 10, so his father went down unto the woman, and Samson made there a feast. So he used the young men to do. And it came to pass that when he saw him, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. Samson came unto them, and Samson said unto them, rather, I will now put forth a riddle unto you. If you can certainly declare it to me within 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 changes of garment. All right, so Samson gives this riddle. And, you know, the riddle starts out in verse 14. He says there, and he said unto them, out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. And they could not in 3 days expound the riddle. So think about that. Samson is saying, out of the eater came forth the meat, and out of the strong came forth the sweet. And I mean, it's a riddle for all intents and purposes that they have to sort of figure out in 7 days. But, you know, they couldn't figure it out in 3 days. But when you really look at the riddle, the wisdom behind the riddle is apparent. It's very interesting that he would say, out of the eater came forth the meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness, because that's in fact what's happening in the life of Samson. Samson was considered a strong man. He was considered a man of God. He was born into the world for a purpose, but he allowed an agent of Satan to derail him. And the reason why I'm sharing this story, I'm going to kind of wrap this up here now, but the reason why I'm sharing this story is because most of us, as targeted individuals, I'm sure we've all come in contact with an agent or a honeypot for that reason. And, you know, we have to be very, very mindful of these agents and very mindful of the fact that someone very close to you can actually be an agent of the enemy. So it's very, very important that we be mindful and very careful of individuals we allow into our life. If you continue to read the story here, you'll find that, you know, because of this woman that Samson married, this Philistine woman, Samson died. He lost his life. But not only that, he gave up his secret as to where lied his strength. And the story is really interesting. I mean, you know, a lot is being uncovered here, I think, for a reason. This story has always fascinated me, especially now in my life, because, you know, sad to say, I have to admit that I've come in contact with sort of a honeypot in my own experience. And I can see how this could bring down any man or a woman, you know, whether you're a man or a woman. Sometimes those close, affectionate relationships can be the most detrimental if we're not allowing God to give us discernment to know who's right or who's sent from God and who's not sent from God. So that is the one thing that I'm learning. That's the one thing that I want to share with you. You know, as the Bible says, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. The Bible also says, by their fruits ye shall know them. And I'm praying for you. I'm praying the Lord's blessings on your life. I'm praying for your strength. And I ask that you pray my strength in the Lord. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.